And I talked about one other thing I want to touch on is that I did talk earlier about necrotizing enterocolitis or NEC. And fortification, there has been no research that has shown that fortification increases the risk for a baby developing neck, while distension is something that can happen just because of tolerance. Most of the times we will take the baby off the fortifier for a couple days and then we are able to eventually put them back on it. It's just that they need a couple more days to be able to tolerate it. Okay, so now back to calculations. Um, so this is very similar to the slide earlier. We talk about breast milk at its base is roughly 20 calories per ounce. The nutritional requirements for full-term and premature infants. Now, we see I have the same situation, a 2 kilogram infant that is fed 8 times a day, 150 calories per kilogram per day equals out to 37.5 calories per feeding when being fed 8 times a day. So that, like we did earlier, comes to 1.9 ounces per feeding or 56 mLs per feeding. Now, if that same 37.5 calories is used with 22 calorie per ounce breast milk, that brings it down from 56 mLs per feeding to 50 mLs per feeding. And then if we go from to 24 calories per ounce, that brings us down to 47 mLs per feeding. That is a big difference. So that means for our total of the day for this 150 calories per kilo on the 20 calorie breast milk would be 440 mLs per day. On the 22 calorie, that's 400 mLs per day. And the 24 calorie breast milk, that's 376 mLs per day. That's roughly 75 ml difference from the 20 mLs to 24 mLs. That's over a feeding. That's about a feeding and a half. So that's the difference when we're talking about fortifying breast milk, is we are talking about basically not having that baby eat an extra feeding and a half. And when we're talking about premature infants who have to first of all learn to feed and then learn to increase and not get tired. So when babies in order for a premature baby to go home, they have to be able to take all of their feeds, maintain their temperature, be able to maintain their heart rate and their oxygen saturation, so not have any bradycardias or desaturations. Did I say weight and temperature? So to do all of that takes a lot of energy. So they do need the calories, but if they're tiring themselves out trying to eat an extra feed and a half, either their weight's going to go down because they're using too much energy to eat that, or their temperatures are not going to be maintained. These are all just one big picture, but I think that 20 calorie total day is 448 mLs versus the 24 calorie 376 mLs per day. Really just shows you the reasons that fortification is needed. Okay. So now we're just going to talk about storage. So breast milk, freshly pumped breast milk is good for 4 hours at room temperature. Once you're going to hit that 4 hour mark, you want to put it in the fridge. It's good in the refrigerator for 4 days. If you're going to hit that fifth day mark, you want to put the milk into the freezer. It's good in the freezer for 4 to 6 months, but 6 months. If you happen to have a deep freezer, it is actually good for 9 months in a deep freezer. Now, when you take milk out from the freezer to defrost it, from the beginning of defrosting, not once it's fully defrosted, once you start defrosting it, it's good for 24 hours. And then similar with fortifier. Once you fortify breast milk, it's only good for 24 hours at that point. Now, when you defrost breast milk, let's say you defrosted breast milk at noon one day and then at 3 p.m. you decide to fortify that breast milk, it doesn't mean it's now good till 3 p.m. the next day. It's still only going to be good until noon because you defrosted it. So with the defrosting versus fortifying, whichever happened first is where the 24-hour mark is. You don't get a reset based on that. All right. That's why it's always good, whether in the hospital or at home, you want to label your milk. You want to label the time and the date that it was pumped. And then if we're taking this class because milk will be fortified. So when you fortify the milk, you want to label when you fortify it. Because similarly, if let's say you pump breast milk on June 1st, and then on June 2nd, you fortify the breast milk, Doesn't mean it's now good still till June 4th. It's only good for the 24 hours at that point. It's not still good for the 4 days. So label it. Label it when you pumped it. Label it when you fortify it. Don't lose breast milk. It is important stuff. You work hard to get it. Okay, so now let's just take a quick peek at the articles that we went over. They are right here. So this was the first article that you guys should have read prior. It's providing breast milk for premature and ill newborns. Let's see. I'm going to give you guys just a couple minutes if you want to go over this one more time before we dive in. Okay, so that first article, it has a lot in there about just feeding, optimizing nutrition and feeding your baby, talking about latching, breastfeeding, stuff like that. Also, it talks about rooming in, which we're not really going to get into that right now because that's for a different class. That's not for fortification. But the main things I want to just touch on in that first article is that human or breast milk it's the easiest thing for a baby to digest. However, we always want to emphasize to parents that if a mom is not able to successfully pump or breastfeed, that is okay. We want to feed her baby. That is the most important thing. The baby is not going to be put into a life-threatening situation because they are being given formula instead of breast milk. That's not the case, and we never want a mom to feel that she is being judged because she doesn't want to breastfeed. Some people do not, and that is perfectly fine. Or that she's not able to. We don't want to make her feel inadequate because she's not able to. This NICU is stressful enough. We don't need to add stress to them. And then, sorry, so I digress. So fat and breast milk can also help with the baby's brain and neurological development. I know I just said about formula, and then here I'm giving you positives on breast milk. But like I said, it is a mother's choice what she wants to do. And sometimes it's not even her choice. Sometimes it's her body's choice if she's able to. So we present them with facts and then whatever they decide or however they're able to. Um, sorry, okay. And then additional nutrients may be needed to optimize your baby's growth using fortifiers. So it's only a small part of the article, but I still think it's good to read just because it kind of gives a little bit more in layman's terms about talking more to a parent, to a mother, about the benefits of breast milk and how she can help her NICU child. Okay, and so now let's go and take a peek at, sorry, 1 second. We're not to Kahoot yet. I just want you to take a look at our second article right here, the optimizing nutrition in preterm low birth weight infants. However, we were just going from the third page, starting right here. Let me just make sure. Right here, nutrition to preterm infants and what to feed. So I will again give you guys a few minutes just to do a quick refresher. Okay, and now for Article 2, most of this we touched on is a little bit more of a formal medical journal as opposed to the first article was geared more towards parents. Um, and we touched on many of it. One of the things, the three key points that I just want to bring out, there's no correlation between necrotizing enterocolitis or NEC and the use of fortifiers. Fortified breast milk gives the baby additional nutrients, especially beneficial for those low birth weight infants, whether preterm or full term. And also, one plan does not fit all babies. So while some babies may be able to stick with only, let's say, 130 calories per kilo per day, not all babies will be able to do that. Some may be at 100, some may be at that 150, even up to the 160s, 170s when they need to. Each baby's plan is individualized, and that continued monitoring for these babies is needed even once fortification. They may have been on it for 2 or 3 days and have no issues. We still need to monitor them. We will draw weekly or biweekly electrolytes, the basic metabolic panel, the BMP, just to monitor, like I said, especially their electrolytes. And we will go over a little bit more with those articles. Any questions you guys have first? So, any questions you guys have before we go into the Kahoot? Like I said, it is not a graded. It does, give me who got right, but it's not something that is graded at all. This is just a discussion, just a little bit to not be sitting here staring at the screen. So, any questions before we begin?